Good morning, everybody. I'd like to begin by welcoming those members of the public or press who've joined us today, either in person or watching via the live stream, to this meeting of the Environment and Green Investment Committee at New Shire Hall in Alconbury. On behalf of the committee, I would like to extend a special welcome to Councillor Andrew Wood, who is attending his first committee meeting here today. Congratulations and welcome, Andrew. The council allows filming and photography at its public meetings, so please feel free to take pictures and use social media during the meeting. May I ask, though, that everyone present turn their mobile phones to silent or vibrate whilst the meeting is taking place. There is no fire alarm test scheduled for today, so if the alarm sounds, please leave by the nearest marked fire exit and assemble in the car park. The closest fire escape is through the middle doors on my left. The first item is apologies for absence and declarations of interest. So would the Democratic Services Officer please report any apologies for absence?
Thank you, Chair. There are no apologies today.
Thank you. And does any member wish to declare any disclosable pecuniary interest or non-statutory disposable interest? Disclosable, not disposable, interest? No. Thank you very much. The second item is the minutes of the meeting of the 14th of March. We're being asked to approve the minutes of the previous meeting held on the 14th of March 2024 as a correct record. Does any member disagree with the accuracy of the minutes? No. So therefore we will accept the minutes as agreed. Do officers or members have any comments on the action log, please? Officers first. Are there any updates? None? No? Members, any comments, questions on the action log? No? Thank you very much. Item 3 is public questions and petitions, and we have none of either. Therefore, we move to item 4, heat pumps for Friday Bridge. And this will be presented by Chris Parkin, who is our Community Energy Manager. So I will hand over to Chris to present his report.
Thank you very much. So in July last year, ENGI committee agreed the procurement of a contractor for whole house retrofit assessments, heat pump installation design, and quotations for domestic air source heat pump installations in Friday Bridge in Fenland. This is part of a government-funded innovation project called Heat Pump Ready. And that project is aimed at addressing non-financial barriers to the installation of domestic heat pumps and examining the impact of heat pump installation at scale within an area. The council is a member of the consortium that's delivering that project in Friday Bridge, and the project has trialled a one-stop shop website for surveys, installation design, supporting energy efficiency measures like insulation upgrades and solar PV, and for issuing quotations. The same website would also be used to enable residents to book installations and apply for loan finance and receive handover documents if the project moves forward to the next stage, which is installation of heat pumps. The one-stop shop's been combined with local marketing and engagement activity, which has been led by the Peterborough Environment City Trust. When we took that report to committee last July, we agreed to report back at the end of the marketing, customer recruitment, home survey and finance offer development stage and seek a decision before proceeding to the installation work. So the project has now completed the home surveying stage. Slight updates to the numbers that were in the that are in the report. 14 home survey reports have been produced that propose installing air source heat pumps rather than the 12 that were reported in paragraph 3.1.4. There has also been a modest reduction in the average installation cost for the air source heat pumps quoted in the report. So rather than the £15,020 per property average, again at paragraph 3.1.4, the average is now reduced to £13,634 per property. The survey reports include an assessment of the impact on residents' bills, and that has been calculated using the energy price caps that currently apply under Ofgem's energy price cap. In all cases, there is a small increase in energy bills projected, and that ranges from £65 to £271 per annum, depending on the property. That's just looking at the impact of the air source heat pump itself. It's mentioned in the report, there is a government commitment to rebalancing electricity and gas prices with the specific aim of making heat pumps as cheap to run as gas boilers. And that will be done by shifting some of the policy costs that currently apply on electricity onto gas. There are, however, no firm policy measures implemented to bring that about as yet. The reports, the home survey reports, that is, also propose loft insulation top-up for 2 properties and solar PV installations for 10 properties. As of this morning, I do have some feedback from the consortium on the response from residents to the surveys and the home reports that have been issued to them. So there are 3 properties that have expressed a potential interest in proceeding, another 3 where they do not yet have a response, but I understand that the remaining 8 are not interested in proceeding. So we're looking at potentially 6 installations. Not a huge number, but nevertheless, there is some interest in proceeding with installation. However, given that the numbers are small, it's clear that we haven't met the 15% uptake target that the government had set for the Heat Pump Ready scheme, and that's 15% of properties within an area served by 1 low voltage substation. So we haven't achieved that, which means that unless government relaxes that target, funding for installation work would not come from Heat Pump Ready, but would have to come from the boiler upgrade scheme. That doesn't have any impact on residents because they both offer a £7,500 grant per installation. However, the consortium members would have to cover their own staff costs for managing the installation phase if that goes forward. They have indicated that they're willing to do so. The project has also secured an external finance officer, which was, a finance offer, which was one of the other things it was looking at, subsidised by the heat pump supplier, which is Daikin, and that provides a loan funding offer to residents, either to pay in 12 monthly interest-free instalments or to pay in 36 monthly instalments with 6.9% interest charged. If the committee approves the finance offer, we will encourage residents to compare that with other offers available to them. The finance offer does look competitive relative to other home improvement loans on the market, but it is the case that some mortgage lenders do offer preferential borrowing for their existing customers. So if those residents happen to be with particular mortgage providers, there may be better value offers available to them. The report seeks a decision from committee on whether to proceed to installation for the limited number of residents that do wish to proceed, and also on whether to proceed with extending the finance offer to residents. I think that's it from me by way of introduction. Obviously happy to try and answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris. This is how I'm proposing to run this debate. First thing I would like to say is that Councillor Jan French is one of the local members for this area, and there is normally a right for local members who are not members of the committee to address the meeting. That has been offered to Councillor French, that opportunity, but she has another engagement and she has indicated that she is happy for Councillor Count, who is the other local member, to speak on her behalf in this meeting. Now, we have an amendment which is going to be proposed, and in order to be fair and clear and transparent all round, what I'm proposing to do is to ask for questions to Chris on the report and the recommendations as published. I'm proposing then to ask Councillor Count if he wishes to move his amendment. And once that has been moved and seconded, if that is going to happen, I will then invite members to ask questions of Chris about the amendment and the implications of the amendment. Once that has happened, we will discuss and vote on the amendment, and then, depending on the outcome of that, we will have a debate on whatever the main motion is as a result. Is that all clear, and are members happy with that way of proceeding? Yes, thank you very much. So, questions then to Chris on the paper and the recommendations as published. Councillor Bradnam.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you very much, Chris. I just wanted to ask, you mentioned staff costs for managing the installation which the consortium had agreed to do, and I wanted to check whether that meant labour to install the boilers or admin to cover that process, or both.
Yeah, it's administration from the consortium, managing the work of the installation contractor. The labour costs for the installation are included within those average installation costs that I quoted, and I probably should have mentioned those are before the £7,500 grant is applied. So what's that about? The 13,600 becomes sorry, where are we? 5,800-ish. No, that's not right. 6,100-ish after the application of the grant. So that will be the cost to residents, around 6,100 on average.
But the crucial point was the consortium had agreed to cover that.
The consortium have agreed to cover their costs. There is a small implication for the council in terms of our staff time to manage the contractor. But I've estimated that that's going to be, given the small number of properties, that's only a few hours a month.
Thank you. Councillor Gowing is next.
You mentioned that the annual bill impact £65 to £271. How was that calculated?
So that's calculated from the consumption, the current consumption of the properties and the projected consumption with the air source heat pumps installed, and using Ofgem's current capped prices for electricity and for gas, which I think are around 25p per kilowatt hour for electricity and about 6 pence per kilowatt hour for gas.
Okay, I tried to find out the energy consumption of heat pump, and the only way I could do it was to actually sign up something, but I didn't do that. But I did find that the average cost was about 5,500 kilowatt for the heat pump. I only used 1,300 kilowatt of energy, so that would amount to more than £271.
1,300 kilowatts per annum of electricity,
which I use at the moment.
Yeah.
And the potential of having to use 5,500 kilowatts.
Yeah. Yeah. What it's doing is it's saving on the gas, or in this case, all the Friday Bridge is on gas, so it's saving on gas consumption. So you need to calculate the total cost of gas, and that's what you're saving, and then deduct the total cost of the additional electricity consumption. So that's how those calculations have been made.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Basically, apologies if I misheard or didn't hear the answer, but I think you said at the beginning there was a small take-up on this. Is that correct?
So there's an incomplete response at the moment from residents. 14 proposals issued. 3 have indicated that they are interested in proceeding. Another 3 we're waiting for responses on. And as I understand it, the other 8 have declined to proceed.
Other 8, sorry?
Have declined to proceed. They don't wish to go forward to installation.
Right, thank you. I thought that's what I'd heard. Thank you.
Councillor Ray.
Can you talk about 15% being the sort of trigger point? 15% of what?
It's 15% of properties within the area served by one low voltage substation.
So properties that are suitable or properties that are
No, 50% of
properties?
all of the properties within one low voltage substation area. I mean, it was originally a 25% target from government. It was always incredibly ambitious. You might want to think about it from a perspective of boiler lifetimes. If we assume a boiler has something like a 20-year lifetime, you'd expect that only about 5% of properties would be looking to replace it. So 15 or 25% immediately sounds very ambitious. And if you compare it with the level of uptake in the east of England on the boiler upgrade scheme grant, which has been running for nearly 2 years now, over that 2 years, only 0.15% of households have taken up that grant.
0.15.
0.15, yeah.
Right, okay. So
Councillor-
it's not, I mean, wouldn't it be more logical to do it on the basis of an absolute number of properties, surely from a... I appreciate that's not your decision.
Yeah, I can't really comment on that. Those were the targets that were set. And the rationale for that was government was interested in using this innovation project as a means of testing out what the impacts are if you have a high level of deployment within an area. So it is also wanting not just to look at tackling the non-financial barriers to customer uptake, but also looking at how does the distribution network operate and manage installation at scale. We haven't got installation at scale on this project, so that element of the project certainly won't be
So
delivered.
falling short of the target, we probably will not get the administrative upgrade, and that will therefore increase the price to the residents slightly.
We won't get any support from government for the installation costs, but the consortium members have agreed to absorb those costs themselves. So there would be no additional cost passed on to the residents.
To the resident. Okay, thank you.
Flurry of hands now. Councillor Hathorn was first.
So I get that it's a small number because it is I think it's a really hard decision to make. Right. Okay. Yes, so I understand that. I can see why it's a small number because it is, it feels, yeah, that you're going into the unknown. If your boiler's not failing as well, it feels like a sort of step, and I can see why householders are not taking it up in the way that it'd be really great if they were. Even with a small number within the paper and the recommendation as it is there a proposal to make sure that we capture whatever learnings there are from the process and we tell the story and we sort of maximize what we can out of it so that, what can we do as a county to make people more easy about taking and more prepared to take the plunge to do this thing?
Yes, absolutely. There is a proposal to capture the learnings from the installation work if that goes ahead. So that's the primary driver, I would say, for the other consortium members for wanting to cover the costs and continue to capture that learning. And obviously we'll review the findings and consider what that means for any future council activity in promoting domestic heat pump uptake.
Thank you. Councillor Bradnam, you wanted to come back with a further question.
Thank you. The joys of finding your annotations on an electronic agenda. Anyway, that's just my fault. But at 6.3 under risk, that one of the lower bullets says heat pumps are a different proposition from gas boilers. The installations are all low temperature heat pumps. These heat space by supplying heat at a lower temperature over a longer period than a gas boiler. and radiator temperatures will be noticeably less hot than residents are used to, and there's a risk that residents may perceive these differences as faults. That's on page 22 of our agenda pack. And I just wanted to ask, it's sort of a bit aligned to what Councillor Hathorn has said. Have the residents who have expressed an interest, has all of that, you know, added to the money and the complexity and the installation and all of that, has it been made clear to them? Because what I've encountered with people who have had air source heat pumps installed is that they're sort of slightly startled by the way it apparently doesn't work in this, you know, in the sense that it doesn't work in the same way their old system worked. And there is a perception that costs are higher initially. So has all of that been explained to the people in the proposal letters that were sent out?
That's not explicitly covered in the home survey reports that have been issued. And if there is a decision to proceed today, that information, providing that information to residents, will be one of the next steps.
So they would have made an expression of interest, and then the detail of the implications of the installation will be made available. So we actually might get more people dropping out once they hear that, possibly.
It's a possibility, but these are very much around managing expectations and understanding what is normal for heat pump operation. It's not the home surveys and proposals for heat pump installation have been through a detailed heat loss assessment to ensure that heat pumps are suitable for the properties, specify the right size of heat pump. All of them include radiator upgrades to ensure that that lower flow temperature will still deliver enough energy into the space to keep the spaces warm. So it's really just about information and ensuring that residents understand how the heat pumps are going to operate once they're in.
And finally, through you, Chair, in the surveys, have they checked that the homes are suitably insulated and that they're suitable for installation of air source heat pumps?
Yes, absolutely. So that's part of the contractor's core competence, and they have, in a couple of cases, as I mentioned, identified areas where there is potential for insulation upgrade that would need to be delivered as part of the installation. But in most cases, the properties were suitable without any additional insulation measures.
Great, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Councillor Coutts was next.
Very simple question, and it may be in the text there. I'm not fully aware of how big Friday Bridge is. How many people taking up would have been the 15%?
There's not a straightforward answer to that, because there were 4 different substation areas targeted in Friday Bridge. The smallest one, it would have been quite a small number of properties. It would have been, I think, less than 10 properties required to hit the 15%. The largest one, I don't think we got any take up at all. So I think the total number of properties in the 4 substations that were targeted was around 500. But the 3 where we've got uptake is a much smaller number than that.
Thank you. Next on the list is Councillor Tierney.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to make sure I understand the numbers here. So the government target was 15% and the take up is 0.15%. So it's actually 1/100th of what the government asked us to achieve. Surely we have to take that as a failure and a clear indication of what the public want, don't we?
No, sorry. The 0.15% is the take up of the government's boiler upgrade scheme grant. The 3 to 6 properties within the target areas, I don't have a percentage figure for you, but it's substantially higher than the 0.15%. So the implication is the marketing locally and the one-stop shop approach has increased uptake from a extremely low level to a low level. if that makes sense.
Can we not work out the, sorry, Chairman, can I just come back? Is that okay?
If you're addressing the chair, then yes, you may.
Thank you. Yes, that's why I said sorry, Chairman. So, yeah, I'd quite like to know the percentage that we.
No, I'm sorry. You're not going to be impolite and you're not going to disrespect the Constitution. You will call me chair, please, or you will not speak.
I'm sorry. What do you think I called you, Chair?
Now that you're calling me chair and not chairman, you may proceed. Please ask your question.
I see. I wasn't aware of the point that you were trying to make there. I thought you were saying I should address you rather than that you were unhappy with a word that I used. So fine with that. Okay. So I would quite like to know the actual percentage. Can we not work it out from the population that we were targeting versus the number of take up? I mean, knowing the percentage will be useful given that there was a percentage target.
It says so in 3.16.
Being pointed to 3.16, Councillor Tierney, in the report.
3.1.6 indicates.
3.1.6.
Apologies, Chair. 3.1.6 does talk about percentages, but it doesn't give us the percentage. It's that confusing answer we've just had. It's difficult to say, and we've got a question. Can you not actually give us the answer to this, please? It's not in 3.1.6.
Chris.
Yes, apologies for the confusion. I've only this morning received the numbers of responses that we've had. So I don't have at my fingertips the number of properties in each substation area. But what I can say in terms of the 4 substation areas targeted, the numbers we're looking at are around about 1% of the properties across those 4 areas. It'd be more than 1% if we focus down on the 3 areas where we've got some level of uptake. So it is low, but it is substantially higher than just the boiler upgrade scheme grant uptake.
Thank you, Chris. Councillor Gardner was next.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you, Chris, for your report. Bearing in mind what happened with the solar panel installation across Cambridgeshire, how are we going to ensure that that does not happen again with this project? Because that caused severe a detriment to the county council's image across certain parts of the county, not perhaps all of it. So how are we going to ensure that this doesn't occur now? Because I'm just concerned that another failure or problems could create bigger problems going forward where we won't get anybody taking up schemes through the county council.
Yeah, so I'd probably caveat my answer to start with to say that I don't lead on the Solar Together scheme that you're referring to, so I may not have all the answers on that. My understanding is that across Cambridgeshire, that was successful in all of the districts other than Huntingdonshire, where there were specific problems with one of the 3 installers that were appointed under that scheme. So just wanted to not just focus on the negative, it was actually quite successful elsewhere, and some of the districts I think are more favourably disposed to it than Huntingdonshire would be. The ways we've managed that this time round, so the installation contractor is a contractor that's been appointed by the council. So we have a call-off contract with the installation contractor who's been appointed, and residents can then call off installation work under the terms of that contract. So we control those contractual terms, and we have been able to put the contractor through the normal financial checks we do on anyone we procure. We've also ensured that they hold the required accreditations to be fully qualified to do the work. So they've got Microgeneration Certification Scheme accreditation. They're accredited to the publicly accessible standard 2030-2035, which is looking at domestic retrofit for energy efficiency as a whole. So they're qualified to look at solar PV and insulation upgrades as well, and to deliver those. And they're also Trustmark accredited. The district councils are actually already using that same contractor for domestic retrofits funded by the Home Upgrade Grant across various parts of Cambridgeshire. And they have delivered several domestic retrofits under the Home Upgrade Grant scheme without any issues. I don't have the precise numbers because there are two contractors. Between the two, they've delivered 78 retrofits. No known issues reported with those. Those are a range of measures: insulation and heat pumps and solar. We also, as part of our contractual terms, require that contractors have an insurance-backed warranty. So in the event that they did go into administration, warranties would still be upheld. The consortium and the council will be monitoring and quality assuring the delivery of the work. We have ensured that we've selected the heat pump supplier that will be used to be a well-known, reputable supplier with a local supply base as well. So the supplier is Dakin, and they have a spares depot in St Ives, so they're well able to support installations once they've taken place. I think realistically, the measures we've taken have probably managed the risk to be as low as it reasonably can. Obviously, there are always some risks associated with any installation work, but as I say, I think they've been managed to be extremely low, and we are talking about a very small number of installations as well.
Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Chair. I know through personal experience that older properties are with insufficient insulation, where insulation is not possible to get to the level needed for these air source heat pumps. Do we know within the Friday Bridge area what percentage of properties might fall into that category? And therefore, even if the residents were keen to take up the service, their property would be ineligible?
So firstly, I'd say that there have been innovations in air source heat pump technology, and it's much more applicable to older technologies than it used to be, particularly via use of high temperature heat pumps. In the previous committee report last July, I attached an annex on a government study of installations in 742 domestic properties, which included a number of solid wall pre-1900 properties where they'd succeeded in installing heat pumps without any difficulties. They did triage out a slightly higher proportion of properties as not suitable in that age category, but it was still around 2/3 of properties were found to be suitable for retrofit. In terms of properties within Friday Bridge, what I can tell you is within the 14 properties where reports were issued, there are only 2 pre-1900 properties, and all of the rest are 1967 or later, so would be cavity wall properties.
Thank you very much. I'm not seeing any more. No, I am suddenly another flurry. Councillor Corney.
Thank you, Chair. You have to forgive me because the answer is probably in here, but my laptop for the last 10 minutes has been doing an update, so I've lost everything. Just with there's certain misconceptions, obviously, with air source. We've already heard. And I'm sure I know the answer to this, and it's probably, if it's not in the paper anyway, but is there, or do we, lose the funding if we was to sort of, go down the route of like a hybrid system? People have got systems already inbuilt, whether it be oil or gas, or can we use those as top ups? Or does that discredit us from the from the funding straight away? And I'm just sort of thinking another way to overcome the misconceptions with air source, and sort of, if it gets that temperature that bit more, and that's quite being too technical. I'm sort of trying to keep it simple, really. But I think you're nodding, so I think you kind of get the gist of what I'm sort of saying. I'm just trying to improve the take up.
Yeah, I do understand the question. So you're asking if you can get grant funding for a hybrid system where you retain a gas boiler and have a heat pump. And so you've got that extra confidence that you'll always get heat from somewhere. Unfortunately, the grant funding doesn't allow for that. It is just for removal of a gas boiler, and it would also apply for removal of oil boilers, but this is not an oil-fired community, and replacement with a heat pump.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Cant.
Thank you, Chair. I did signal earlier and I thought you acknowledged me, and this happened at the last meeting as well, I remind you. I'd like to pay my thanks to Chris and Cheryl for the briefing I received on this as the local member, and the subsequent range of emails that have gone backwards and forwards that I've tried to get my head around this subject. That is correct that Councillor French and I have agreed that I'll speak today on behalf of this. I just at the moment want to move on to questions. So we've got 14 properties, all right? You said up to 6 could proceed. 3 have said that they will, they continued with their expression of interest. They've not signed any contracts, etc. And you said there's potential for another 3 who haven't responded yet. How long have they had to respond? When did the surveys go out?
I don't know the precise date, but the report was drafted based on the draft reports before they were issued to residents. So they probably had them for less than 2 weeks.
I think at the first meeting we had the briefing, we said it went out just before then. They've all had their surveys now. That was over 2 weeks ago, so that would be fair, wouldn't it? So I'm just saying that because if you ask me, 3 haven't responded. If you send out invites to a party and people don't respond, you pretty much guess they're not coming to the party. So I'm going to work through this paper on the assumption of 3 being a maximum, not a potential of 6. Can I ask the costs of increased costs of £65 to £271 a year? Did that include the cost of borrowing, or on the other hand, assuming that people have got £6,000 or £7,000 sitting in a bank account, did it include the cost of loss of interest?
That just assumes that's just the bill impact for the air source heat pump element of the installation. Doesn't include interest, doesn't include any savings for insulation upgrades or for solar PV.
Yeah, thank you. So I've got that as another £400 plus a year. Were comparisons to nighttime electricity storage made? I don't see anything in this paper. It was just simple, or was the options coming forward from government just literally just have a look at the air source heat pumps and nothing else, or were other comparisons made?
There weren't comparisons with electric storage heaters, no. And yes, the focus of the government's focus for this project was just heat pumps.
Okay. And would it be fair to say, although you can't give us an exact answer on the percentage of 3 households, it'd be in the range of maybe 3%, somewhere around there?
Yeah, I wouldn't expect it was higher than that, certainly.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is that a tentative hand again, Councillor Gardner?
Tentative hand, Chair. Chris, in your response to one of the other councillors, you spoke about high temperature heat pumps, but in this particular report, you're talking about low temperature heat pumps. Can you explain to me what the difference is and what that may then do to, if they decided they wanted to go for a high temperature one, you know, is that high temperature better than low temperature is what I'm trying to get at?
No, I think most people would take the view that low temperature is better than high temperature. There is an efficiency benefit for providing heat at a lower temperature. The heat pump works a bit more efficiently and uses less electricity, but it does usually then have to be combined with radiator upgrades. If you are going down a high temperature route, then it's a bit more expensive to run it. Because it has to work a bit harder to raise the heat to the higher flow temperature. And typically we're talking about 55 degrees C or below for a low temperature heat pump, and 65 to 70 degrees for a high temperature heat pump. So much more akin to a condensing boiler.
Okay, thank you very much, members. I'm not seeing any more questions in this section of the meeting. Therefore, I'm going to move to Councillor Count. Councillor Count, you submitted an amendment within due time. Is that an amendment you now wish to put? And if so, would you formally move it? I will then ask whether it's seconded, and then I will come back to ask you to speak to it.
Thank you, Chair. So the amendment is to strike through the existing recommendations and a new amendment, delay considering this proposal for 1 year or after the government has indicated how it proposes to rebalance the costs of gas and electricity, whichever comes soonest. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And is that amendment seconded? Councillor Smith, thank you very much. Councillor Count, therefore, I come to you to speak to your amendment.
Thank you, Chair. So, as I said, this is in my area. I've had a briefing on it. I've tried to get my head around it, and it's been a very informative journey. And part of the reason for this project is it's to inform us. It is very much about lessons learned. It's a pilot project for government to experiment to see how to move forwards. And what we've learned so far, the deal breaker for many people, is the cost of the individual increases. It's not come out neutral. It's not come out with a saving. It's actually at the end of year 1, year 2, you're going to spend more money than if you stayed on the old system. So whilst the ideology of reducing your carbon emissions is very fine and very good, in my opinion, if we want the masses to move to that, we have to find solutions that are at the very, very minimum break even. There's disruption, but certainly not cost more. Now, with these increases of £65 to £271 a year, there's also the increase on either the cost of borrowing or the loss of interest. I find this hard to move forward with as it goes. But when we look at the project, and going back to the lessons learned, much of it is for about us to learn lessons, how to put together a package that we can offer to residents. And we've done that. We've formed the idea of a one-stop shop. We've worked out how you measure the efficiency of the building, whether you need insulation, photovoltaics, whether this will work for you, and at the end of the day, how much it will cost, and then what will happen to your bills. And as part of that journey to get to this stage, the final thing, the ultimate thing we've come out is it doesn't work. The system works. You know, I'm not saying air source heat pumps don't work, but the fact is we haven't developed something that will appeal to the masses. Now, the government set a very low bar there. They said, like, 15% to prove to us it can work, get us 15% on board. But actually, we're landing around 3%. And of those 3%, those people at this current point in time with an expression of interest are saying they are either willing to borrow £6,000-7,000, or they have £6,000-7,000 languishing in a bank account, and they are prepared to pay £200, £300, £700, £600 more a year, depending on whether they borrow or not, for the privilege of reducing CO2. That, for me, is not the masses. That is certainly not the masses, and I don't really expect, whether it's national taxpayers' money or local taxpayers' money, to be spent pursuing what people who are wealthy enough to make these decisions for ourselves to do. We need to develop products that actually get the masses to move. And this lesson we've learned here locally, and we can feed back to government, it doesn't work. It doesn't do that. One of the parts of the paper talks about if we pull out, there's a reputational risk to the council. Well, I'm sorry, the reputational risk to the council at this stage of going ahead is to say, actually, whether the £1.8 million comes from government or local taxpayers, we're quite willingly going to use that to subsidise 3 households that are obviously wealthy enough to proceed without it, and again, a very minimal saving. And we're going to have people working at the council on quite decent wages, actually delivering all of this. This is not a great use of our officers' valuable time. It's not a great use of taxpayers' money. You know, this is an area of high fuel deprivation. This is my area. It is an area of multiple deprivation. And we know that more established routes, such as high insulation, work very well in terms of cost benefits. In fact, in the separate grid that I was provided 2 of the households that needed insulation could actually put in the insulation and make a saving. So that is the right way, and that is where we would traditionally be trying to aim subsidies at to do things that make sense financially and for the individuals and for the MUS. So why have I put forward an amendment rather than just say, let's vote this down? Because at the moment, as it stands, I would vote against this. I cannot justify this level of expenditure for this few people for the level of carbon savings. I just can't. Because all we get out of that is the lessons learned, which I've discussed, and we already know the outcome of that. A hand-holding exercise for 3 individual households, high employment in order to do that. But there is something on the horizon that the government has discussed, and it is painfully obvious it will have to happen, is the policy change of addressing the cost between electricity and gas. When we know what that policy change looks like and when it will be implemented and how much that will vary it by over one period, it would be good to see this paper again with the new figures, right? And that may change the outcome of this. It may not, it may be insufficient. But you can't justify on the way we are at the moment going ahead at this point in time. Now, if this gets rejected or you don't go with the amendment, the actual impact on the individual households is very limited, because the impact is they lose the hand holding, but they don't lose the money. So the hand holding is us being alongside them for the journey. But those 3 households can get the boiler grant scheme of up to 7,500, which is the same anyway. And that's going to continue till 2028. So it's not time limited in the same way. So there's no reason for us to try and pass this paper today. If those 3 households wanted to go ahead, there's a route for them, and we could come back with a better version in a year. But if the policy doesn't change or the timeline for that doesn't work, then we've got to, our message should be about lessons learned, to send a letter to government saying, we've looked at it, here's our facts and figures. It doesn't work for the masses, so therefore it won't work. This pilot project has been shown to fail. You either need to change the subsidies you're giving now, or you need to change the market so that we can get the masses converted. So that's the reason for the amendment, Chair, and I'll be grateful for any support. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Smith, do you want to speak now, or do you want to speak after we've had questions to Chris? Okay.
I don't see the need. I'm happy to support it. I don't see the need to rush in. There is a low take up. They won't lose the funding. So I really don't, sorry, you put a lot of work into this. It's nothing personal, but it's just the fact I don't see a need to rush. So I support it. That's all I've got to say, really.
Thank you very much. As I indicated earlier, I'm now going to move to questions to Chris on the amendment specifically. We've had questions on the substantive report and recommendations. I'm asking now simply for questions about the amendment and the impact of the amendment. Anybody wish to ask? Councillor Bradnam to start, please.
Thank you, Chair. Given that the amendment just says wait, what would be the downsides of waiting? And do you have a sense of what government policy might do that might make a difference to the cost benefit analysis, as it were?
So I think you asked about the downsides of waiting. So I think probably the largest one is just the signal it sends about heat pump installations to those that are interested in taking them forward on the basis of the environmental benefits of them, albeit noting there is a small adverse impact on running costs under current energy prices. Other potential downsides, obviously there is a risk of criticism with the council withdrawing, and I think we'll lose the support we had from the other consortium members who've been maintaining the one-stop shop website and delivering the resident engagement. So if we tried to come back in a year's time, we've got to kind of then put all of that back in place. Also, obviously, the contractor quotations will lapse in that time and will be subject to inflation between now and then. So that would need to be considered. in terms of any insight into what government policy might do, that's quite difficult. They've certainly said that they're committing to rebalancing gas and electricity prices in order to make heat pumps cost competitive to run with gas boilers. So I think that's as much as I can really tell you. That's what they'll do. No similar commitment with oil prices, but that's because generally oil price is favourable relative to oil prices anyway. And no further detail really on how that might be done and when that might be done.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Coots was next.
So if I could just ask you, Chris, just to go a bit further on that. So if I'm hearing right, you're saying that actually wait would mean cancel, that basically the project itself would have been wound down and would no longer exist if we waited a year, or am I misrepresenting you there?
I don't think it's quite as dramatic as that. So the residents that want to proceed will probably be those who are most environmentally motivated. There's a fair chance that they will go forward without the scheme, but at higher risk of issues with the installation because we're not providing any QA or support of it. And we lose access to any learning that does come from that small number of installations. And we also potentially, if we wanted to do anything similar or modified in future, we lose the access to the one-stop shop website and the skills that have been developed within the consortium. So there are some downsides, but I think in terms of it's not quite as extreme as that the installations won't happen and there'll have been no value from the project.
No, it was our aspect of it that I was asking about really. It wasn't so much these particular 3 installations, if that's what would be involved, but the as you put it, the learning from this project would be something which would be still available in a year's time. We would have to start up again. What would be lost, I think, is what I'm asking.
Certainly we wouldn't have direct access to the learning from that small number of installations. There will be some, well, if it went forward, if the consortium went forward without us and government agreed to fund under Heat Pump Ready, there would be some kind of published report at the end. I think that's unlikely to be the case here because we haven't got to the 15% threshold. So any learning from those installations will remain with the consortium and it will be entirely at their discretion whether the other consortium members shared it with us. Having said that, you need to balance that against it being a small number of properties, and there are other published studies where we've got data from, so the electrification of heat study that I mentioned with the 742 installations. So what you're losing is kind of the real nitty-gritty detail of on this installation we found there was this particular issue with the interfacing with the existing pipe work and it was resolved in this particular way. Those sorts of things don't tend to get published in large study reports, but are the sort of details that we would potentially pick up from this.
Thank you. Councillor Corney was next.
Thank you, Chair. Chris, you just answered one of my questions anyway, but the second point was about the consortium. Would they not be happier with the time if we did delay this and we use that time wisely to go back and promote further and increase the numbers? Would excuse me, would that not be would they not feel that as beneficial anyway?
I haven't had any feedback from the consortium on council accounts amendments, so I can't answer that with in a very informed way. All I can say is the consortium were keen to proceed to installation now, maintain what momentum we have from the project and gather the learnings that there were. I think there is still some hope that once installations start, and there's hopefully some feedback from residents to say it's keeping me warm, that will generate some further interest. And there is still therefore potential to pick up further expressions of interest as the installations start. But obviously no guarantees that we will get any more than the sort of 3 to 6 properties we're looking at.
Thank you. Are there any more questions for Chris on this amendment? I'm not seeing any, so I will move to the debate on the amendment. Does anybody wish to speak about the amendment who is not already spoken? Councillor Tierney, I saw first, and then Councillor Bradnam.
Thank you, Chair. Members of this committee might remember that I have addressed this committee in the past and made the comment that it's very easy to virtue signal about people's views on things, but you don't find out what they really feel until they're asked to spend some money on it. And I think this is a very good example of what people really feel. And I also warned this committee in the past as a critical friend, which is how I see myself here, that you're going to get knocked back on your policies that are going to surprise you and upset you. This is just the first of many, I'm sure. Now, I will be supporting this this amendment reluctantly, because my preference will just be to say, no, we're not going to do it. It's crazy. The public have sent a very clear steer and we should do as we're told. But knocking it down the road another year, that suits me fine, because we'll be having the same argument then. And the reason is simple. And I addressed this when we've talked about heat pumps here before. They're a poor heating system. They are worse than the current systems. They cost more than the current systems, and they don't work well except in houses that have been very specially built with the insulation radiator systems to make them work well. That's just simple fact. And no amount of propaganda or spin will change that. It's a simple truth. People know that, and that is why they don't want to spend money. They don't want to. Why would anybody potentially now borrow money to install an expensive system that won't work as well and will cost them more every month forever? They're just not going to do it. And that's why they're not doing it. And we shouldn't be trying to educate them, because they're educated already. And we shouldn't be trying to steer them, because they don't need our steering. They've given us a signal and we should listen to them. People are having tough times out there. They want traditional energy that works. Now, some of them may be concerned about the climate. Some of them won't. There'll be different views out there. They can express how concerned they are by how much they're willing to spend. And I think you've just been given a steer. Thank you.
Councillor Bradnam.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Tierney is of course right, that a lot of people have not expressed an interest, but some people have. And we as a council are trying to reduce our carbon footprint, not only for our own estate, but to help residents reduce their carbon footprint themselves throughout the county. This hasn't been press ganged. People have expressed interest. They've been sent information. Some of them have expressed an interest in proceeding. And you know, I think it would be very disappointing if we didn't give them the opportunity to try this. It's a voluntary expression. Nobody's being strong-armed into it, and I think we should. I think we should view this as an opportunity to try and assist people in this endeavour. And people are quite right. People have, Councillor Count has pointed out that the people who have expressed an interest are the people who are motivated about climate change, and are prepared to. They've looked at the results of their House report and they've said, yes, okay, I'd like to do this. So I think we should proceed, and I don't think we should accept this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hathorn.
So firstly, I found some of the discussion around this slightly distasteful. We've been characterising a number of households who have made a financial decision that they would like to do this as being wealthy. I don't think we'd talk about households, cars, for example, and say, oh, there's a lot of wealthy households in this county. People get to choose how they want to spend their own money, and I don't think it's for this committee to characterise households in that manner. The notion that the public have spoken on this matter is insane. We were asking people if they wanted to change their domestic heating system. Boilers tend to last, I don't know, 10, 15, 20 years. Sometimes you hear that have been lasting a lot longer. If you just installed a new boiler, you're not going to spend a whole load of money installing an air source heat pump. There's only been a certain number of people who see that they're coming towards the end of their boiler lifespan where they might be considering this. So already the section of the public who may wish to take up this scheme is far reduced from, it probably is fewer than 15% of people. So out of that, we're hoping for an extremely high hit rate. So it's not at all surprising that we haven't got a higher hit rate. It is the easiest thing in the world to delay on this, to go, well, if we wait, it's going to get better. There's going to be a better solution around the corner. It's going to get cheaper. But we don't know it is. All we know is that the current gas and oil powered heating systems are burning carbon. We all know that. I mean, certainly I feel guilty whenever I switch the boiler on, but I still do it. But we know that this carbon is heating the planet, it's putting more energy into the systems, and we're seeing the impact of that. We're seeing the excessive flooding, we're seeing the storms, we're seeing the impact of climate change. So, you know, the government might do something about energy pricing in the next 12 months. There is definitely going to be a general election. Who knows what happens? It's pretty unlikely a letter from this committee or the findings of this scheme are going to influence government decisions. I think we could be waiting an awfully long time to wait for what we're expecting to wait for from this amendment. So no, I think we should just get on with it. We've helped these households. We've made them believe there's a scheme that they may wish to participate in. It's just 3 households or 6 households. Let's just let them get the air source heat pump they want while they're ready to do it, which they may well not be in 12 months' time. And let's get some learning from this and work out where we go after this.
Thank you. Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to address the comments about our air source heat pumps being poor heating systems, which I don't recognise. It's a matter of simple thermodynamics that air source heat pumps have an efficiency of about 300%, while combustion gas boilers have an efficiency of about 98%. So typically, an air source heat pump per kilowatt hour of energy put into it are 3 to 5 times more efficient than boilers. That's a simple, undisputed matter of thermodynamics and science. Now, the issue here, as Councillor Count rightly observed, is that currently in the UK, because the way of our energy prices are calculated, is that the price of electricity is pegged to the price of gas. But as he also observed in his opening statement, it's painfully obvious, these are his words, it's painfully obvious that has to happen. And the government has a policy to do that. So what we can expect in the future, so at the moment, it costs 3 times as much per kilowatt hour of electricity than it does for gas. But heat pumps are 3 to 5 times more expensive, 3 to 5 times more efficient. So what I'm saying is, it's a marginal decision now, but if you buy a new boiler or heat pump, a boiler is going to last you about 15 years, heat pump's going to last you between 15 and 25 years. As an economic decision over the lifetime of that investment, you have to expect that the price of electricity is going to come down, because that's this government's policy. And as Councillor Count said, it's painfully obvious it has to happen. So trying to make an economic decision based on the next 2 years, when yes, electricity prices are artificially high, is not a sensible thing to do. And I think we have to look over at the lifetime of the investment. And I think it's rather easy to calculate that over time it's going to use less energy, which is a good thing in itself, less carbon, and I think over time will be less expensive.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any more speakers. Oh no, I am now. Councillor Corney.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, just mulling over all of the comments so far, which I have to say, I agree with everybody. I can't sort of see I disagree with anything I've heard so far. I think it's I just think from my own point of view, I think we've got a set of parameters here that we're pegging this as if it's a failure, as if we're walking away. We're not walking away, are we? I mean, I think the thing is taking it, giving us a bit of breathing space to see what's happening. Hopefully, encourage further people to come along and join the party for the way Councillor Count sort of said earlier on. They've all been invited. Let's remind them and use that time wisely to try and encourage them to come along and show how good they are, rather than just sort of we're sort of disbanding it. That's how it's making me sound, and we're not. So I think I support the amendment. When I first read it, I was like, I'm not really sure about this, but the more I think about it and hearing the comments, I think it's a responsible approach. Let's get the numbers up. Let's use the time wisely and move it forward, but not disband it.
Any other speakers? Please indicate now. No, thank you. Right, well, we've in concluding this debate on the amendment, I think we need to focus on what the amendment does. The amendment risks, well, I'm sorry, Councillor Bradnam, you had a point of order?
Can we see the wording?
The
Or
wording,
the amendment.
the
as
wording
presented?
is delay considering this proposal for 1 year or after the government has indicated how it proposes to rebalance the costs of gas and electric, which I think means electricity, whichever comes soonest. Is that? Yeah, it's a fairly straightforward amendment. So what the amendment does is it definitely rules out seeking the support of government in progressing this scheme. It rules ourselves out of any decision that the government may take to press ahead with this scheme here and other schemes in other parts of the country, because that is a time, if it goes ahead, that is a time limited arrangement and that will fall out. Therefore, it means that we don't get that support from DESNZ and we end up entirely on the resources of the consortium. The amendment risks the public who have been informed about this and given the opportunity to participate, deciding that this council says stuff and doesn't mean it and doesn't go ahead with it and doesn't do it. Why bother? We've been through all of this and now they're just saying they're not going to do it. It also risks the potential support of it risks the support of the consortium, who will now look at this and go, oh, right, okay, they've kicked it into the long grass, they've put it on the back burner. We're not going to invest our time in this, so why should we bother? And as has also been said, if this scheme is delayed by a year, then it will come back with fresh quotes, fresh costs for installation, which will, as we know with everything, be higher than they are now and at the mercy of inflation. So you will end up with a loss of support from government, a loss of support from residents, or a loss of confidence and trust from residents, a loss of support from the consortium, and higher installation costs. That's not something I think is a sensible way forward. I do think that we have put something together which enables us to learn about the potential for one-stop shop approaches and methodologies, or enables us to learn from this whole process end to end of supporting people through installation. No, it's not 15%. That was always a high bar, I think, anyway, for various reasons. But it is something that we can start with and we can learn from. And I am therefore very strongly encouraging this committee to not support the amendment and to continue with the recommendations as published. So I'm going to move to, I'm sorry, was that a badum tish or a yes? Thank you. I'm not sure that was a contribution to the debate, but nonetheless. So I'm going therefore to move to the vote on the amendment. Can I see those in favour of the amendment, please? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So your group is united behind that well-whipped council account. And can I see those in favour, against the amendment, please? And that is also unanimous. So on the side of the joint administration, so this amendment is defeated by 8 votes to 6. We will therefore move to the discussion of the recommendations and the paper as published. Does anybody have anything further to say on this matter before I move to the vote on that? Councillor Tierney, Councillor Ferguson, Councillor Bradnam, in that order, I think, to start with.
Sorry, Chairman, I was just going to say your group was also unanimous, so well done to you as well.
Yep. Well done, both sides. Thank you very much indeed. So Councillor Ferguson was next.
So the paper talks a bit about reputational risk, and I just wanted to acknowledge Councillor Gardner's comments. I think they were as question, but about the amount of reputation we lost in Huntingdonshire over the Green Energy Together debacle, and I think I'm going to vote for this, but I want just to make sure that we don't ever repeat that again, because it was highly embarrassing for everybody and did not only the council's reputation really bad, but also reduce the credibility of solar energy, I think, in Huntingdonshire. So yeah, I support his comments. That's all.
Thank you, Councillor Ferguson. Councillor Bradnam. Councillor Bradnam, you indicated.
Oh, I thought there was somebody else first. Okay,
No,
that's fine. Thank you. I am really pleased that we have done this huge piece of work, and thank you, Chris, for your very comprehensive report. We are trying to, as an administration, we are trying to encourage decarbonisation in all sorts of ways, and we're trying to make it easier for residents to decarbonise their properties too, and to find ways that we can tie together the complexities of, as Councillor Hathorn has said, the point at which you need a new boiler, you think, well, what am I going to do? Am I going to go for something that's green and a bit different and requires some refitting in my house and it's quite complicated? Or am I just going to say, oh, I'll have a gas boiler, thank you very much? We're trying to make these decisions, which are costly for residents, easier and more straightforward. And I think this one-stop shop has been a very good idea. And I would dearly like us to make sure that we capture the learnings from this in the same way as we have done at the Swaffham Prior heat pump. We've produced a world-class system at Swaffham Prior, which people are listening to and learning from. And I think we need to recognise that sometimes we have to be entrepreneurial and give people opportunities and assist people in these complicated decisions. So I think this is excellent, and I'm glad that, and you will remember from the very first question I asked, which was, are these properties suitably insulated? It's been confirmed that the properties that have expressed an interest have had a survey and they have been found suitably insulated by the engineers who are going to install. So I think we should enable those people to take this step that they're interested in taking. So I'm for this, definitely. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Corney was next.
Thank you. To make it clear, I'm for this as well, completely. I just wanted to get more people involved in it. That's the thing. So my question, and I still haven't got a computer, so Chris, forgive me if it's not what he's doing. Of the 8 people that have refused, have we gone back to them to sort of just find out their reasons, and if it's something that it could be something quite simple that we can explain and it may change their mind, and what else can we do? Can we go out? Can we go out again and ask? Sort of build that number up, get it close to as close as we can to that 15%.
Capturing feedback from those who declined to go forward absolutely will be part of the project. I don't have any specific feedback from the 8, but my understanding is that the sort of anecdotally, the general feedback from those who are disinclined has been about capital cost and running cost. But we will capture it in detail if the project moves forward to installation. Also, I think the consortium will continue to market the opportunity within the area if the committee agrees to go forward to installation. So we will hope to pick up additional numbers as well.
Thank you. I've shown some leniency. We have moved beyond questions now into debate, but I have allowed that one. Thank you. Councillor Coutts was next.
I think we're all agreed that in terms of a wild success, this is not it. and we've debated the reasons for why the take up has been so low. What interests me when voting for this is what we're voting to recommend, which is actually, in terms of the numbers and all of the caveats we've seen, is actually very low risk, which is a very, very welcome thing to be looking at in this area where there have been significant risks in a lot of these projects. We're agreeing that a very small number, probably, of heat pumps go ahead to be installed through this system, that the funding will be, as indicated there, by one of the two options, depending on what the department says, that the downside financial risk to the council will be almost zero, from what I've been reading. And the second recommendation is simply to offer a finance opportunity to a very small number of residents who may or may not choose to take it up, and to present it in a way that's clear about the alternatives open to them as well. So the reason that I'll be supporting this is that the benefits seem small but significant, and the risks seem very small indeed.
Thank you, Councillor Coots. Councillor Count.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, this will probably go ahead, and I'll just make a request of Chris Parkin that the committee are circulated with the final figures of take up, the cost of the entire project and CO2 saved as and when we get to that point, see whether the three go ahead or not. What you're actually voting for at the moment is to continue burning through £1.8 million to deliver 3 to 6 properties that could have gone ahead anyway. I was disappointed to lose the vote on the delay, and the arguments used for that was, there are 3 properties that won't be able to go ahead, and actually they could have gone ahead anyway without this decision being taken today. So that was very disappointing that came across. I just want to pick up on another point from that element as well. When I said wealthy, I said wealthy enough to make this decision, and the difference being that somebody who cannot afford to feed their children cannot be wealthy enough to make this decision. And there was a big difference between describing people as wealthy and wealthy enough. And the reason I brought that into the conversation was it's an area of high fuel poverty, and therefore I regret seeing us waste our efforts or put our efforts into something that delivers such a low take-up when we could put our officers' valuable time into efforts that could deliver so much for more than just three properties. We don't know what the future will bring. We don't know what will bring it in government policy, although the indication is that it will happen. I'd be surprised if whatever government there is in a few years, next year or a few years' time, will not be looking at the ways to deliver things that move us away from fossil fuels. But we do know some other things, such as solar panels, as the take-up has increased, even with the air source heat pumps, from when they first start being developed to now, the cost is going down and down and down. And with mass production, it may go forward. I'm disappointed that alternative solutions weren't examined at the same time, such as I was just recently informed that new boilers are able to burn hydrogen when that comes online. So I just learned that. And of course, that means that people may be offered the new boilers, but green hydrogen comes along. The efficiency that was discussed about this and the thermodynamics were quoted. I have no quibble with the efficiency of an air source heat pump, but what that fails to take into account is the whole household picture and the thermal loss for an uninsulated property, and changing that impacts more on something with a low heat regularly pumping out than it does on a high heat in a room. So one's less efficient than the other, but the one, these make so much more sense in the new properties that are built to deliver them. So I completely agree with Councillor Turney's remarks. And I think that focusing on just one element of the efficiency didn't really give a whole picture of what we're talking about here, which is a household. Having voted this, if you vote this through today, I'd be surprised if it actually achieves very much, because I would be surprised if government allows this to continue with somewhere around 3% instead of 15%, which is the threshold they set. When it was maybe 12%, that may have gone ahead. So I think that we may in effect be not achieving anything, those that vote for it today. I won't be supporting for this, because at the end of the day, there's a value for money element here. You're burning through £1.8 million. We established through the papers and my discussions, there's probably over £300 a tonne CO2 saving. And that is not a great use of anybody's money. So the 3 properties could go ahead anyway without this. So I'm going to vote against this, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Count. That is your right and privilege. So we're moving, I think, to the vote on the recommendations as published, which I will remind you are to agree that the heat pumps for Friday Bridge project should proceed to installation works for the limited number of properties that have signed up for the scheme. This could be either continuing as phase 2B of the heat pump ready programme if DESNZ permit this, or using boiler upgrade scheme funding as outlined in section 3.2 of the report. And also to agree that the heat pumps for Friday Bridge consortium include a private finance offer for residents wishing to proceed with a heat pump installation and requiring finance to do so, and that residents be encouraged to compare this with other sources of borrowing. Can I see those, please, in favour of those recommendations? Thank you. And can I see those against? That is carried by a majority. So thank you very much indeed for the debate, members, and thank you very much, Chris, for answering questions so admirably and bringing this report to us today. The next item, indeed the final item on the agenda, is the Environment and Green Investment Committee agenda plan and appointments to outside bodies. Are there any updates? There are no updates, I'm told, by our Democratic Services Officer. Are there any comments from members, please, on this? None. So thank you very much indeed. The committee is next due to meet for a special meeting with a slightly different substantially different configuration of members at 12 noon today. And the next regular committee meeting is on Thursday, the 4th of July, and I declare the meeting closed. Thank you very much indeed, everyone.